to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to our Monday, December 11th school board meeting. We will start with our agenda approval, deletions, additions. Dr. Varacco.
Thank you, Mrs. Suze. We do have a couple of amendments under Roman numeral 7A2, in addition to my agenda, vape education presentation. Also have some updates to Mrs. Castaneda's personnel recommendations under 7B1. And then the final item is we are fortunate to have Mrs. Smith's class here today. So we would, when we get to the official school board topics, we'd like to move them first, if that's okay with the board.
Absolutely.
So we have to do a couple other brief things, and then we'll get to our regular agenda.
Move to approve the revised agenda.
Motion by Dr. Medlin.
Second.
Second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Is there any correspondence this evening, Mrs. Kelly?
There is not.
All right, and we're going to skip our liaison committee updates and move right into our official school board business topics consent agenda. Dr. Varacco.
Thank you again. Seek board approval for the minutes from our executive session on November 20th, as well as our regular board meeting minutes from November 20th. Also seek board approval for the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures that you received in your packets last week.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Marshall.
I'll second that.
Second by Mrs. Kelly. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. There is no public comments regarding action items, so we'll move into our official school board business topics, regular agenda. Dr. Varacco.
So we are going to turn it over to Dr. Bracy and Mrs. Smith, but I think it would, I'm going to go sit out there so they can sing all the same way.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all of our parents for coming out and for supporting us. Boys and girls, are you ready? Start coming on up. So tonight, we are going to hear from the smartest people in the whole district, our kindergartners. Come on up, guys. These are our students from Mrs. Rebecca Smith's class at Coling. So, boys and girls, are you ready?
Thank you, yes. Hello, everyone. Oh, my goodness. Hi. My name is Becca Smith. I am a kindergarten teacher over at Coling. Yes, I am Mrs. Smith. This is a really huge honor for me. I went to Coling as a kid, and I went to Lake Central as well, so this is a really cool for me to have them perform at the school board meeting. So I wanted to preface with how proud I am of these guys. They've worked very hard, and they're excited to showcase what they've learned so far in kindergarten. Tonight, our students are wearing their ABC Boot Camp vests. Each vest was handmade by each student in the letter that they chose for the alphabet. At Coling, once we have finished learning our alphabet, all the letters of the alphabet, the kindergarten classes get to celebrate the hard work that the students have accomplished. We hold an ABC Boot Camp fashion show, and each student gets to wear the red carpet and walk the red carpet and show off their vest, symbolizing all the hard work they have accomplished in learning their letters and sounds. So tonight, my students would like to perform to you a very special Signs of Reading song that has helped them to master their letter sounds, and it's called the Secret Stories Alphabet. So Paisley, where's my little Paisley? Would you like to tell everybody a secret that we have learned about our alphabet vowels? What is it, Paisley? Do you remember? The vowels. What about the vowels? Does anybody know? What, Ryan? Let's help us. Vowels are what? Vowels are the only letters in the alphabet that can say their name, so they're superhero vowels. So if you see us doing our arms like this, it's because they're superheroes and very special, and it's one of our secrets that we're working on. So, without further ado, This is why I'm not Taylor Swift. I don't know how to do it. All right. And since it's the holidays, we would also like to sing for you guys Jingle Bells. So, all right. Who's got my play button? Let me know when you're ready. Thank you.
I know a secret that will help you read. It's called the Better Alphabet. Just sing along with me. Keep your eyes glued on each letter and use your muscle mouth. Let's sing the Better Alphabet song right now. A says ah 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 ah, but it can also say a a a a a a a a a. B says b b b b b b b b. C says k k k k k k k, but it can also say s s s s s. D says d d d d d d d d d. E says eh 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 eh, but it can also say e e e e e e e e e. F says G says g g g g g g g g g, but it can also say j j j j j j j j. H says I says I I I I I I I, but it can also say I I I I I I I I I. J says j j j j j j j j. K says k k k k k k k k. L says l l l l l l l. M says m m m m m m m. N says n n n n n n n. O says ah 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 ah, but it can also say o o o o o o o o. P says Q says quack 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 quack. R says r r r r r r r r. S says s s s s s s. T says t t t t t t. U says but it can also say you 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 you. V says v v v v v. W says whoa 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 whoa. X says x x x x x x x. Y says yeah 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 yeah, but it can also say E or I or E. Z says z z z z z z z z z. The Secret Stories alphabet, it will help you read. You'll learn the letters' secrets by singing them with me. Keep your eyes glued to each letter and use your muscle mouth when we sing the Better Alphabet song out loud.
That is great. That's great. Thank you, thank you.
All right, now watch the place clear out.
Great job. Wow, the room empties. Oh. Okay.
All right, moving on to our other agenda items. I'd like to introduce Mike and Zach Seljan, who are going to give us an update on the Lake Central Education Foundation grant situation.
First, I'd like to say that's a pretty tough act to follow, so.
Yeah.
So tonight, I'd like to update everybody back, I think, in the October board meeting. Dr. Bracco had me come up and give a few words on a capacity building grant that we were applying for through the Indiana Association of Public Education Foundations, also known as NAPEF. At the end of October, beginning of November, we were notified that we were one of 6 recipients of a $10,000 grant award to build capacity within the Lake Central Education Foundation. That $10,000 grant, we're matching with $10,000, so $20,000 in total, plus probably some expenses to go towards being able to hire a part-time foundation administrator. Very exciting for the Education Foundation as well as for the Lake Central School Corporation, because we're hoping that through this we can reach out further into the community and bring in additional resources that we can funnel back to teachers and students within the classroom here in the Lake Central School Corporation. So very exciting. We're still in the process of figuring out how we're going to do that. We're going to be meeting here in the next week or so to kind of put together what our formulation is for where we're going to advertise, where we're going to get out, putting our job description together so that we hopefully by middle of February we'll have somebody in place and we can hit the ground running with that person to hopefully start bringing in additional funding, which will be great. So that person will certainly be reaching out to Dr. Bracco and looking for what additional funding opportunities that we might be able to do when we bring in additional grant funding. So we're really looking forward to that.
Here, here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The other foundations that were also awarded were Munster, Clinton Central, New Palestine, Spring Valley, and Union City. So Munster actually is not using theirs for an executive director. They're hiring a website designer. So their board decided that they did not want an executive director, so that was the direction they decided to move in, which that's everybody's eligible to do that. So I want to thank Dr. Bracco. He was kind enough to provide a letter of support which was very instrumental and helped. We got a lot of compliments on our grant application. So again, thank you to the board for your support of the Education Foundation and Dr. Baracco and the administration for your support. Without it, it would certainly make our job a little more challenging and difficult. So we certainly do appreciate that. Two other things, I guess, to note, or three other things, sorry. Back in November, NFF has their annual conference. I was able to attend that and just wanted to provide a couple of highlights. The keynote speaker was Dr. Jeff Butts from the superintendent of Wayne Township Schools. His topic was, "You can't lead if no one will follow you. What will your legacy be?" I don't know if any of you probably had a chance to hear him, Dr. Baracco, but he's a very entertaining individual. Kept the crowd in stitches. So, but there were also sessions on AI in content reading, writing, and storytelling. The big discussion there was using AI for foundations to tell their story, but also how schools are using it. And pretty much they talked about that if you're not embracing it, you're going to be left behind. I know that's a big challenge for schools because there's also a lot of opportunity for people to use it in areas that are not necessarily in good ways. So that's something I'm sure that the school corporation's looking into. Finding and securing major grants, best practices in grant writing, and data basics. They also had some roundtable discussions talking about different topics, payroll deductions, alumni engagement, how your foundation can support teachers in education, engaging board members in fundraising. So overall, it was a good conference, probably the best conference I've been to of all the conferences. So they keep getting better every year, so always a lot of information. There was a couple other things, and I had given this information to Dr. Baracco. He probably already maybe had disseminated it. The NFF has partnered with the American College of Education. They're offering $20,000 of grants in $4,000 increments to NFF member school districts for their staff to apply for grants to continue their education, to finish up a master's degree or get a special certificate or something like that. So that's something that's only available to NFF member organizations. And then they're also partnering with the Hanning Howell Associates. They're trying to get up to $50,000 of grants for food insecurity. I don't know how much that is an issue within our district, but it's something out there that maybe we can consider. So that's all I have. I appreciate your time. If anybody has any questions.
I just have a comment. And, you know, Mike, you sent all your thank yous to everybody up here, but we send a great amount of thank yous to you and your team that wrote this grant, because it was quite lengthy and quite well done. So thank you from all of us.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you again.
Super job.
Yeah.
For my next agenda item, I'd like to introduce some folks who teach regular school for us, but have also taken on the added responsibility of helping us with our vape education program. With us this evening, we have John Newcomb and Carrie Faturis from the high school and Lori Smith from Clark, and they're going to share with the board. Are you doing this on hard copy or is it going up on the screen? Okay, I'm going to get out of the way if it's going up on the screen. Okay, so they're going to talk us through the current program that we're using, remembering that we're doing it in lieu of going straight to punitive action. We're trying to address this issue, which has become pretty prevalent in America, through education. So take it away, Lori.
All right, so we thought I would start since I am our middle school vape education teacher. It's interesting when people are like, oh, we need the vape class. I'm like, okay, well, and people will jump to conclusions about that. But yes, it's a vape education. We're, of course, trying to educate our students on the dangers of what they're putting in their bodies. I know Kevin Gardner, who used to be here, he presented to you guys before. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to come to that. So we've obviously updated a lot of what we still do is what he explained to you guys before. So hence, I'm not going to put it all up there for you guys. So I kind of just broke it down on like our discussion facts. So at the middle school level, we start off by talking about the facts of nicotine and vaping. Obviously, we do have kids who get in trouble for cigarettes also still. I've had a few who have been caught with that. So, you know, we obviously still discuss that part of it because it is still nicotine. So we discuss, you know, nicotine addiction, how it is still cancer preventable cause of death in the U.S. It's still leading cause. From there, we talk about the brain and how it affects, the drugs affect the brain. And I know in the PowerPoint, we kind of break it down a little bit more for you guys. So the parts of the brain, I mean, we dive into even the parts of the brain from the NIH. I use, it's Mind Matters. It's a whole program that they have on the PowerPoints. That's what I'm highlighting there. So it's drugs in the brain. We go through from, like I said, the parts of the brain that are affected, how the brain is altered, and why addiction happens. And it's interesting because I feel like every time I teach this class, the focus is, you know, these two kids might be more interested on, you know, the actual parts of the brain. These kids might be interested on advertisement. So it's very interesting that I've taught this class many times and I've never taught it the same way. I feel, at least I feel like that. So that's also very interesting. But anyway, we talk about big tobacco, the advertisement aspect of it, how much money in advertisement is spent, even in the state of Indiana. It's astronomical. I wish they, people would put that much money into public education. That would be wonderful, right? We talk about the flavoring, and even though, you know, it might sound wonderful, the harmful effects of even just adding that flavoring into your lungs. From the advertisement, we talk about the harmful effects. We compare, you know, cigarettes versus vaping. We compare, or we talk about how devices have malfunctioned and how people have actually gotten physically hurt by, you know, those devices exploding in their face. Even one article that was shared with me was about how the carotid artery was severed and the person ended up dying from vaping, you know, so I mean, that's just scary in itself. So I don't think these kids are aware of how dangerous these devices really could be. From there, we also talk, so in the beginning of our class, we usually give them a worksheet and we tell them, you know, we are not here to judge you. I'm not here to do anything but make you more knowledgeable because, you know, we all know knowledge is power. And the more we can make ourselves more knowledgeable, the better choices we can make for ourselves. So sometimes the kids are honest with us in the beginning, sometimes they're not, especially middle schoolers. If they don't know me personally, I'm not teaching them, you know, they tend to kind of take that step back going, well, is she gonna try to get me in trouble? I tell them, unless they're going to, if I'm worried about the information they're gonna share with me is going to harm themselves or someone else, obviously, it's between us. You know, as an educator and, you know, someone who's trying to learn. We try to keep that between us. Obviously, everything I do share with our counselors. We want to have that feedback from our counselors at the end to, especially if I'm not in the building, so they can go and they know those resources are there for them. I know, especially at Clark, our counselors are so amazing. And that connection that they can have has really, I feel, helped some of our students after having the conversation with us. But anyway, so we talk about the when, the where, the who that they're vaping with, and at the end, we kind of talk more about, going back to that worksheet, we add in conversation about mood. Why are we vaping? What do we feel like when we're, before we vape, after we vape? And the biggest part is replacing those behaviors. If we feel like they are, this kid does this quite often, you can't just stop a habit, you have to replace that behavior. So we discuss that and things that they enjoy and dive into more of that aspect of how they can replace that behavior when they are having a craving from the nicotine. Again, following up with the counselor is a huge part of that for us. If they do get caught a second time, I've only had a few of those myself personally, to where when we have those conversations, we review some of the information, but we really do focus on the who, when, where. It's interesting, some of our kids talk about family dynamics, and I feel like some of these kids, they feel like because their family vapes or smokes that they're destined to that. So even having those conversations that, just because a family member doesn't, this is the path they led, that doesn't mean that's going to be your path. And I think some of these kids just need to hear that information, that they, get to lead their own way. So besides that, I don't want to, take all the time away, but is there any questions on the middle school level of our program? This year, just so you guys know, we've had for the first semester, Wednesday will be 7 students with their first offense, and I've had 2 with the second offense this year so far. Kevin he had all of our other information, so I didn't find that information from the past, but it's been pretty consistent with those numbers per semester for middle school. We don't have a ton of students who tend to experience vaping, or at least get caught. But I've felt every experience I've had has been a very positive one with these students, where I feel like hopefully they got something out of it. We do give them, and I'm sure Kevin shared this, but we do give them a folder with information, and I know I didn't share with you guys, but there's information in here, especially those families who, the kid tells me, oh, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time and I didn't get caught, or I just got caught, but I didn't do it, Ms. Smith. And it's like, well, that's fine, but you're here, you're going to educate yourself, and maybe you can help somebody else in the future. And sometimes I'll say, hey, well, sister, brother, whoever vapes, put it on the coffee table. Maybe you can have, maybe they'll pick up the folder and look for that information on how to quit and some resources. So we kind of add that into our folder to help. I think it's a great conversation for families to have too. So, sorry. Anyway, any questions? Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed on your final that you have exit surveys, so I assume you take a pre and a post?
Most of the time we get to it. In the first year, that was something we really tried to push for, especially to know who their counselors were and to kind of get their feedback. If we, like I said, I'm the only one left who started this program. So that is something that it's on there, yes. So if we can utilize it or we feel the need to utilize it, it's there, but it might not be used every time.
Yeah, it could be good information.
Yeah, absolutely.
For you. So then basically the second class is with, if they get reported a second time, it's still with you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And at least for this year, the 2 students I did have, they actually were like, oh, we get to see you again. So, I mean, not that it was always a good thing, but, at least I felt like they had a connection with me to have that second conversation. And I felt like it was a deeper, more meaningful class that we had.
When
So
they
that
attend
was,
the second class, when they attend the second class, do they get more information, or is it kind of repeat?
we do dive more into what is addiction, because obviously, those kids are more risk takers who are going to end up in our second class. So we talk about, what is an addicted personality? What is addiction? We talk more about, a lot of times it is that family dynamic of that conversation, like, hey, I understand that you feel this way, but that doesn't mean that that's your future, you know. So I've had students who were athletes, and, you know, even sharing with them sometimes our own personal experiences of peer pressures. Being, you know, I feel like when we relate to them and we share those experiences, they're like, really? Somebody offered you that? I'm like, you know, so it makes us more human. And I feel like then they relate to us more, and they share with us so much more, and we're able to help them more. So,
Lori, my question is going to show how ill-informed I am, or uninformed. What kind of financial commitment do they have? I have no idea what vaping units cost, or how much are they expending?
you know, you and I are both kind of on the same page of that. Honestly, I know it's more than cigarettes. I know a pod is the same as a pack of cigarettes when it comes to the amount of nicotine in it. And I mean, at least the kids tell me that yeah, it's pretty expensive. Like,
It can range, just like
Right.
technology can range, and with that increases the risk of where it's constructed and how it's regulated and such. It wasn't until about the 20-teens that the FDA became involved and started regulating some of those devices. So, I mean, really, if you look, the internet you could find a device for very cheap with materials that are much more questionable, in the range of 10, 20, all the way up to hundreds. So, I mean, it just depends on your access and your creativity with your Google searches.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Howard, some of the devices carry hundreds of hits. They're large containers.
Okay.
Right.
And so
They have modified.
the other piece is that some of the areas, they could be mislabeled, and there's just not tight regulation on it. That's per the Indiana Tobacco Coalition that I, go to a meeting every now and then with.
Thank you.
And it's not like kids do their homework to make sure that they're getting a good quality vape. So it really opens things wide open, and our examples are probably moderate of what it can do to you physically, mentally, emotionally, the biopsychosocial aspect of it, but just how it's not regulated. It really truly is a poison to the body, and it can be of many sorts that we don't even know because of the devices that they're using to inhale. Things such as the coil being heated up, you inhale that metal fume.
Right,
It's
right.
not simply nicotine and vapor, as it was purported at its onset, the creation of the device itself. So.
Well, and on top of it, the heat, how hot it actually gets versus a cigarette has become so much more harmful to the lungs, where I'm sure popcorn lung has been a big thing that was talked about in the news, and it's not, you hear about, if people stop smoking cigarettes after 10 years, it's like they've never smoked. Well, we're not seeing that effect with vaping. They're seeing that everything that is happening in the lungs is staying damaged because of how hot that device is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what's really interesting is when you mention that to a young man that I know that lives in Louisiana, he says, no, I researched it and you're wrong on all that. It's not harmful. And I'm going, Tristan, yes, it is. So, and it kind of goes to artificial intelligence, fact from fiction, and how do you teach these kids
Right.
what the real truth is? It's a challenging job, and I'm glad the three of you are doing that. And, it's that human connection that'll maybe wake them up, and I'm glad you're there.
Karen and John, do you want to share about the high school program now?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope this, I don't want to I can go like this if you guys want, that's fine. I don't know, I don't want to break this.
There you
There you go.
Heck yeah, thanks, Karen. Oh, sorry, thank you. Appreciate you guys' time listening to us. To kind of piggyback, number one, everything Lori said, I would just echo. That is exactly what we see at the high school. That is exactly what we go over. But to go over how much it costs, I actually asked that 2 weeks ago, and I had any number from $100 to thousands of dollars. Also, the thing that is sort of scary is a lot of them don't actually pay for it. They're getting it from friends, they're getting it from family members, they're getting it to where, a lot of them don't have jobs, they're maybe 14 years old, they don't have money, so they're getting it any way that they can. Friends just lending it to them, old ones that people are getting rid of, relatives, parents, unfortunately, brothers and sisters who are kind of helping them out, and that's sort of where it gets to the point where it's almost like money is not an object. It doesn't really matter because they'll find ways to get it. But the biggest thing that I just want to talk about on top of that is the relationships that we're building with these students on a level that's different than just them being in our class. They have someone, hopefully the goal is to, when we're done speaking with them, they have someone in the building that they trust to talk to about anything. We don't want them to feel judged because they're in that room. They're not bad people. They're just making mistakes because, adults sat in a room and made these decisions to try and kind of prey on the young minds of kids, and it's not their fault. And I think when you tell them that immediately, they feel as if you're not out to judge them and you're there to actually, listen to them and care about who they are as humans. And that opportunity, we had 8 kids a couple weeks ago, and they shared so much amongst each other that I almost didn't have to do anything for 30 minutes. They're talking to each other about, I tried to stop once, it didn't work. Well, what happened with you? Well, I had this withdrawal. I had this is this. And when all these people who maybe they never even met each other in school before can have that camaraderie in class, that means more than anything that we can give them, because that's something they can build on. Additionally, I have a couple quick stories. I have one student who came up to me during freshman rush. They were there with their little brother. They were in my last vape class last year with 3 of their friends. Those 3 friends did not stop, but he felt comfortable enough telling me in front of them that he had been good all summer. He had stopped. He'd thrown everything away. And the friends were like, you know what? We haven't even tried to convince him otherwise. We're all for it. And I said, did you guys stop? They're like, no. I'm like, well, that's okay. Maybe eventually you'll see that, and you'll see kind of how he's living his life a little bit better, and that'll change your kind of track. And the fact that, A, he had no problem saying that in front of me and in front of his friends, who, peer pressure is obviously hard, and B, that those friends were kind enough to say, we appreciate you wanting to do that. Maybe we're not there yet, but you are. We're not going to force you. And I thought that was really neat, too, to see that. And then just recently I had a student say that she flushed hers down the toilet. Obviously, it didn't go through, but I knew what she meant. And she comes in every PTE, and I go, how you doing? And she goes, I'm doing good. It's tough, but we're like 8 days in, and I'm good. So I got one the other day, but I didn't take it. I looked at it, and I gave it back. I said, that's awesome. And sometimes we have those conversations, and that's what I enjoy doing. I enjoy being able to say, hey, you can come to me during school, after school, before PT, it doesn't matter. Just give me an update. Tell me how you're doing. Even if it's not about this at all, if it's about school or anything like that, after school, college, use me as someone that you trust outside of this. And I think we've done a really good job. And I know both of these people are people that they trust as well. So I'll let Karen kind of go into more what she does. I'm the vape
Good to
1
develop that.
educator, and Karen's 2. So she has a little bit different insight there.
I'm really good at this. Sorry to pat myself on the back. So yes, I'm fortunate enough, thank you, and a literal, I love that, I'm very concrete. So I am lucky enough to run the Vaping 2 program here at Lake Central High School, and I work with John, and we also, if his schedule comes up to where he's not able to do the Vaping 1 class, then I'll step in sometimes if it works out. So it's such a great team effort, and I love this summer that we've also met our other partner too. So I just wanted to mention kind of the structure of everything. My personal interest in it is my original training was in mental health, and I also have a certification in substance abuse, hypnosis, and then I went back for school counseling. So wellness is extremely important to me, education, and my professor, I'm not necessarily somebody who is passionate about substance abuse itself, but I'm more passionate about the people it affects. When I was in grad school, my professor came into the room and he was just like, look, I'm not gonna make it pretty, substance abuse isn't, everybody's impacted by it. Are you in or are you out? So I decided to add that certification to my training, and when the position became available, John and I both applied, and we thought it would be a great relationship for him to teach the first class and myself the second. Especially with my specialized training and everything that both Lori and John explained, the most important thing is building that relationship. Time and time again, both in educational trainings and mental health trainings, having one meaningful relationship with somebody in the building is the bedrock for minimizing a myriad of risk factors. So that's really important to me. We did share with you pretty much the whole of our programming from Vaping Class 1 to Vaping Class 2. Mine is much more personalized because I tend to have 1 or 2 students max. And I'm going to run through numbers here at the end, but it's much more individualized, and we go through a website where I ask them what stage they are at in their addiction and so on and so forth. So we really individualize it, and I want to be a safe person for them to come and talk to. I find it very interesting, kind of our fields of study. So Lori is in the health and gym, and John is in the special ed, and I'm a counselor. So I think we all kind of, whether we want to or not, we have a heart for that type of student. And I think it's just such a natural fit to support students in that way. So I was just thinking that while I was listening to my colleagues. So you can kind of look through the different pieces and steps of what we do. I always like to have a reflection sheet where it says the Vaping Class 2. Not that I get information from here that blows your hair back, but it just really, it takes the information that we cover and it has them think about how it impacts them individually, because substance abuse is a maladaptive form of coping. It is their attempt to solve a problem, but in a way that is not healthy. So just kind of identifying what do they have to cope with, what are alternates to that, so on and so forth. And then on the back side of the sheet that I created, writing a letter to themselves, because sometimes people who have friends who have problems, but they don't. But if you can abstract that individual self from the substance abuse, then it's easier for them to talk to somebody else instead of themselves, but they're talking to themselves. So I like to have that as well, in addition to a letter to parents that is sent home, and some resources as well. 9 times out of 10, the parents are using too. I mean, that's just very commonplace. Maybe not 9 times out of 10, don't take me literally on that, but it is very common. I want to close with our numbers. So first offenders for this year, the fall of 2023, we've had 25 first offenders. Last school year, so 22 to 23, we had 60 first offenders, 4 second offenders, and 1 third offender. And I can provide these numbers if you want me to forward them or anything. Any questions you guys have too, feel free to email me, or I love having conversations and I love input about this program. And I'll go back one more year, the end of the school year of 2022, the first offenders were, there were 75, second offenders 12, and third offenders 3. So this isn't going away. It's a need, educating them with the correct information and supporting them as humans that are struggling. This is a beautiful program, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Great, thank you for providing those tools.
Definitely. Thank you guys for having us.
Great presentation.
I have a question. How do the referrals come to you? Through the office, through typically?
Well, for the middle school, usually the assistant principal reaches out to me, emails me, and sets up a time for me to meet the student after school.
So I assume most of these students do this in the restrooms, is that correct, or that's what I'm hearing? Oh.
Okay.
Cafeteria for the bold ones.
Oh. Oh. Ah. Yeah. Well, definitely the brain changes a lot when that addiction is active, doesn't it? So what is the rule? Is it 30 days to change a behavior? Does it take 30 days?
30 days is the physical addiction. There's a 30-30-30. I'm blanking a little bit on, I know one's physiologically, I think forming a habit, and then the psychological one, I think, is 90.
Is that what it is? Okay.
And that's the reason the treatment programs, like the inpatient and things like that, run in those cycles. There's fewer of them nowadays, but because of insurance coverage, but. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have two more items very quickly to review tonight. The first thing I want to do is review one of the topics that was discussed Friday at our ISBA legal seminar. And this is something that I need to give more credit to Mrs. Castaneda because she spent a lot of time this past summer working on our administrative reg, that is our process for reviewing of library and classroom books. And just to remind everybody, that item can be found on our website under About LCSC and then under the English Language Arts Resources. But at the presentation, Attorney Boyce recommended one thing that I don't think we have covered, and that is adding what happens when you get a redundant challenge on a book that a second person decides that they don't like. So I believe, Sarah and I talked about this already, and it's probably a simple solution under number 3 to just add a sentence about if it's been reviewed, unless the new complaint or appeal has specific concerns that are different than the past review, we would not review it. The second piece that we'll probably have to discuss at a future work session is he also brought up if you have a change on the board, because remember, after we do a review, then it eventually comes to the board to hear about what the committee decided. So if we do have a board change, we're going to have to think through how that plays out, and we'll put that on a work session for January. The other piece I just wanted to review for the board and for listeners is that Lake Central did have library books cataloged prior to the 2023 legislative session where this law was passed. One piece that is important, and Attorney Boyce said that he believes that there are going to be national groups that are going to travel around to try to find the people with the most caustic books on their library shelf to take them on. But our state law says that the individual has to be a local resident or the legal guardian of a current student. The appellant must read the content in its entirety, and they must state in writing how the material violates the law. Disagreeable content will not qualify as a violation of the law. So opposing viewpoints on something that people just don't agree with, that's not what the law is attempting to prohibit. And again, I'll say what I've said many times at chamber lunches and elsewhere. I think the Wince test for me is a big consideration. So when you see those clips of people reading excerpts from books or showing pictures from the books at a public meeting, if it makes you wince and think, boy, I wish I hadn't seen that, it's probably something that, first of all, Lake Central has already never had or removed, but also it's one of those things that, if somehow something slips through for a school, they probably will say, yeah, we don't need to be providing this. There's not enough educational value compared to the inappropriateness of that text. So that's really the main thing I wanted to review. I think we're in pretty good shape. We got a little bit of work to do, so we'll get on that real soon. Now, my final item is a piece on Article 7 litigation costs. As the board knows, I will Mrs. Grimal and I have been on this particular consortium for over a year now, and this is one that is trying to look at the process when a parent disagrees with the case conference committee or the interventions or modifications that are being done for students at school, that they take us to a due process hearing. It's become evident that the cost to conduct some of these processes, these mediations and hearings, can get rather high. And unfortunately, some private attorneys don't really have much of an incentive to keep their costs under control. The best solution that's been offered by our group is to employ a small group of experts at the IDOE to handle these cases. So experts in special education law who can take up the charge and get paid a salary and not cost the individual schools so much money. It does appear that some members of the Indiana General Assembly are grasping this. We did get a positive response from Representative Slager when we talked to him about this in the past. It's been shared with me that the governor's office has also been brought into the conversation, and there's a possibility that the governor will want to see something done on this in his last year in office. And I just wanted to share that our next meeting to plan the next steps is scheduled for next Monday. Becky or I or both of us will keep the board abreast of where it is going. So in addition to the other consortium that we joined this year regarding the education profession and trying to get the General Assembly to treat our business, our education profession, as a professional organization more than what they do sometimes, this is another one that we're working on to try to make things better for students in Indiana.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our Assistant Superintendent, Mrs. Castaneda.
Thank you. For my first item, I'm seeking your approval for the personnel recommendation packet, the revised copy that you received this evening.
Move to approve the personnel recommendations.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin, and I will second that. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. My second item is to bring to the board the high school's summer school information. We'll be following the same model that we have done in the past few years. We will be offering economics, government, PE, and pool for our students here at the high school. We will also be offering our Plato credit recovery courses that will run from June 3rd through July 11th with days off for the federal holidays that fall in between. And then we also will have some limited availability on Indiana Online Academy for students who may need to use that in order to earn credits as well. Any questions?
Looks good.
Thank you. And then for my last item, I just wanted to bring to the board the new substitute rates moving forward with the new year. As we've done in the past, we are increasing the daily rate by $5. I do apologize. I feel like this should be an action item, and it wasn't marked as such.
It can easily be changed to an action item, but remember that it gets adjusted to make sure that the instructional aides don't get a higher daily rate than a sub. So we want to use those folks interchangeably, and it's difficult to keep track when somebody departs their role as an aide and then takes over a classroom, and so we've kept that number the same. So we could have included it in the past thing, or we can change it to an action item, but it is, I just want to make sure the board understands that it's equitable and it's what we've always done in the past.
Right, and I agree with what Mrs. Castaneda said, because it deals with money. I think that does need to have a board approval, and so does Mr. James. He's shaking his head. So can we amend the agenda to make it an action item?
Yes.
Okay. So I move to make that an action item and that we support Mrs. Castaneda's recommendation of a $5 increase at all levels for substitute teachers.
We have a motion by Dr. Malko. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Dr. Medlin. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to our Director of Primary Education, Dr. Bracy.
Good evening again. I am seeking your approval for the professional leave request in your packets.
Motion to approve. Motion by Mrs. Kelly,
Second?
Second by Dr. Malco. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our Director of Secondary Education, Mrs. Schieneman.
Thank you. For my first item, I'm seeking the board's approval for the professional leave requests included in your packet.
So moved.
We have a motion by Dr. Malco and a
Second.
second by Mr. Marshall. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. For my second item, I'm seeking the board's approval for the field trip requests also included in your packet.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mrs. Kelly,
Second.
second by Dr. Medlin. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. For my third item, I would just like to share a brief update in regard to the iLearn redesign and the pilot that is part of the iLearn redesign. So the iLearn redesign, the new iLearn, will happen for everyone in the 25-26 school year. Next year, during 24-25 school year, all schools in Indiana are offered the opportunity to opt into a pilot of the new formative assessment piece. And so what the redesign entails is the new iLearn will have 3 formative assessments. They're calling them checkpoints that are 20 to 25 items, 5 to 7 standards per checkpoint. There's a window that each checkpoint will be given in. So schools will have control over when in that window. So it's very similar to something like iReady, NUIA, a formative assessment program, except this one is coming from iLearn and from the state. There's also a summative that is basically like our current iLearn, but shorter. And so the smaller checkpoints, the formative assessments, will be for math and English. Social studies and science will continue to just have the summative at the end of the year. But part of the redesign, the intent of it is to provide the data from the formative instruction so that teachers could go back and do something about the data. They can use it to inform instruction, and then the summative at the end of the year won't be as long. It'll be 30 to 35 items, maybe 35 to 40. And so within the school year, we'll be able to use those results to inform instruction. And so in regard to the pilot, we are considering joining the pilot. So we're currently working with administrators and department chairs and discussing those items. The IDOE has a series of Q&A sessions, the first one being tomorrow, that many of us will be joining virtually, and we've got our questions ready to go. But the taking part in the pilot allows any school that is taking part a seat at the table in terms of providing feedback to the state. So it's helping the state as well as they continue to create the rest of the iLearn. And that's just a brief update about that. Do you have any questions?
Just in general, how are you feeling about this?
I feel great about it.
Okay,
I feel
good.
excited. I like that they're going formative assessment. It makes sense. I'm very interested, to see what kind of data we can get and what that looks like. And actually, each formative, when it's the official year, in 25-26, each formative will have a Form B. I think they're calling it Second Chance right now. But the teachers can go back, reteach, and then they can reassess the student. And then if we have students move in, they can take that Form B. And so it's really very much like iReady or NUIA, but speaks to the exact thing that we're held accountable for.
Good, very good, thank you.
Thank you. And for my final update, I just want to give you an update about Building Thinking Classroom. So as you recall, we had Bob Gustis come and share about Building Thinking Classrooms in the math classroom. And so I just wanted to kind of take the board through what it looks like. You are so gracious to approve professional leave for teachers to go to these conferences. And so last summer, as you know, many of our teachers attended the Building Thinking Classrooms conference, brought it back. You saw Bob Gustis here, and he explained how he's using that in the classroom. But from there, so the teachers took all of that information back to the math departments. We were able to order supplies for the math teachers who wanted to start trying building thinking classrooms. And so the next level from there is that we had teams a team that went to all 3 middle schools and shared for the entire middle school staff about building thinking classrooms and demonstrated and discussed how to use it in other content areas as well, because it's not just math. And so from there, now we've got ELA teachers and science teachers asking, oh, how do I do this? Who can I watch? And so we're starting to see some interest there. And what I really want to point out is it's not about a new thing necessarily. It's just good tier 1 instruction. And so really the difference is, I mean, there's a lot of differences, but it's vertical surfaces is the key point about building thinking classrooms. And so it's allowing the teacher to be in the middle of the room and have a bird's eye view of everything that the students are doing and to get immediate feedback on what the students are understanding. And then the teachers can use that to immediately drive instruction. And so I just wanted to take you through that process and how it works. So when we send people to these conferences or they're wanting to go, it doesn't end there. And then it doesn't end when they come and share for the board either. It's trickling around. And, you know, I'm excited about that piece. I'm excited because anytime we are investing in tier 1, which is just good instruction at the classroom level, that's how we make gains. And we're going to see those gains as this picks up more and more. Any questions?
I think it's great because it reminds me of some of the strategies that were in Chris.
Yes, yes.
And that's just a great program to revisit that periodically and bring that back.
Yes, and we are in the talks of that as well. And what I will say about Chris is that is the you know, I've only been at this for 20 years or so, but in that time, Chris is the thing that has stuck. And, you know, as we see some things come and go, and you think about, okay, why is that so impactful? Because it's just good tier 1 instruction that leans on student engagement and background knowledge, which is
active learning.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a thing, yeah.
Very good.
Cool.
Thank you. And now our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Grimala.
Thank you. I wanted to update the board on some changes coming for our English language learners. So as you may or may not remember from our annual ELL presentation, all students, when we are made aware that they speak a second language in the home, they are assessed to determine if they're in need of ELL services. And then once they are identified, they are assessed annually and their English language proficiency is tested. So the test we use for that is called the WIDA. And there is a exit criteria, and they have to earn a score of 5.0, an overall score of 5.0, in order to exit our ELL program. And what we have found and what has been found across the state is that we have a lot of students who kind of get stuck at the higher end of those scores. And Indiana actually has a higher proficiency requirement than many of the other states that are part of the WIDA consortium. So recognizing that, they are proposing some changes to our exit criteria, which would allow students who earn a 5.0 or above, well, 5.0 is the highest. So students who earn a 5.0 would automatically exit. But they are identifying a range of 4.3 to 4.9 that we would be able to look at some additional data for students and as a committee decide if they should be exited from the program. So they've given us multiple things we have to look at, and one would be a score of at least proficiency on the most recent iLearn, passing the iRead 3, or another test, which for us would be iReady, showing that they were at proficient levels in English language arts. So we would have to have one of those, and then overall grades in the passing score or a rubric completed by the EL teacher showing that they were proficient. And then, so they'd have to have one of those and then a third from any of those categories. So if they had all of that, we would be able to identify them as exiting the program. And then there are also some further allowances for students who are dual identified as an English learner and as a student with special needs, which would really help us also. So what we find is our students speaking and writing seem to be the most difficult levels. Those are the highest order, sort of thinking skills. And it often feels like our EL students are being held to a higher standard than some of our students who are not our English language learners. So when I looked at our scores from last year, there would be about 81 of our EL students who would have fallen in this score range. That would have allowed us to convene this committee to look at their other data and make a determination. So this is still in the final stages of approval by the state, but we anticipate it will be approved for this spring. So we will administer the WIDA very quickly after we get back from winter break is when our testing window opens, and then we usually have scores by the end of the school year. So we would anticipate convening these groups to look at data for our students who fall in this range beginning next fall. So that is my update. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Did you say the range was 4.3 to 4.9?
Yes, so any students that fall within that range, we would be able to create this portfolio for the team to review and consider whether they should be exited.
Does that include a 4.9?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That just seems like a lot to go through for 4.9. Seems like they should
Right, but
grandfather that in or
yeah, we
something.
do have students who kind of get stuck at that 4.9. And Illinois' exit, I believe, is a 4.5. And so if they earn a score of 4.5, they're just done. So this is still a little bit more rigorous than Illinois would be, but does give us some flexibility for our students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now on to our Director of Facilities, Mr. Ledyard.
Thank you, Mrs. Seuss. I have a few items tonight that need your approval. First off was just an update on the capital projects. Bibbage project, we had our OAC meeting last week. Mrs. Seuss was out there as well as some other members of the administration. It's going very well. Outside-wise, we're waiting on some metal panels, which are scheduled to be delivered next Monday, the 18th, so we'll start that work next week. That's pretty much all that's really left on the outside. Inside-wise, on the classroom additions, on the 10 classroom addition, we are putting the primer paint on right now. We are going to start sealing grid tomorrow. The 4 classroom addition, we are taping drywall, and we'll start painting and priming in there next week. We've started some bathroom tile in the 10 classroom addition. That's ongoing right now. And outside, we've also started running some main conduits from the existing electrical room to the existing boiler room, so we can go right down the hallway into the addition. So that's going to be, we'll do a lot of that work over winter break too, down the main hallways. That's pretty much all the update there. Any questions on Bibbage? Grimmer, we're basically just doing some punch list items. Again, our missing air handler unit now is scheduled to ship on January 8th. Again, that just basically serves a boiler room and some receiving area. We have put in, Circle R was kind enough to work with me, and we put in a temporary heater there to give them some heat during these cold days here while we wait on that unit. Once it arrives, we only need about 2 or 3 days to get it hooked up, and that will pretty much wrap up that project. Any questions on the 2 projects? With that, I've got some change orders for the Bibbage project. The first one is to award and execute change order number 1 for Temco Excavating for the Bibbage project, bid packages 1 and 2, earthwork and site utilities, in the amount of $14,140.50. $12,947.50 is for some unsuitable soils that we were doing when we were doing all the excavation out there for the parking lots and buildings. That will come out of a project allowance we had in there for unsuitable soils. And then we have $1,693 for some minor site utility changes we had. That will come out of the project contingency.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Malko.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Kelly. Questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. My next item is to seek your approval to award and execute change order number 1 to site services for the Bibbage Building Project, bid package 4, asphalt paving, in the amount of $59,840. The bulk of this was we stripped and redid the playground area asphalt behind the school where they have their kickball field because it was pretty pitted, and we pitted it up more when we were doing some site utilities here in the summer, so we replaced all that and some minor patching for some site utilities in the existing parking lot, and this will also come out of the project contingency.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Marshall, and I will second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. My next item is to seek your approval to award and execute change order number 1 to Golf for the Bibbage project for bid package 7, drywall, metal studs, insulation, AC, and paint. This is in the amount of $49,103. It's got 3 parts. We have $35,264 for some insulation of liquid insulation. We wanted to put around all the windows at the classroom units as well as the cafeteria. We thought this would be some added protection. We also, on 6947, because of a detail, we ended up insulating some products with the metal roof flutes at the very end of that. And then the principals need us to add 2 timeout rooms, and that's for $68.92 for that. All this will come out of the project contingency as well.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Malco.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Kelly. Any questions?
I do. Bill, what is ACT?
Acoustical ceiling tile.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
My next item is to seek your approval to award and execute change order number 1 to Larson Danielson Construction Company, bid package 8, general trades. This amount is $5,816. This is for the doors, frames, and hardware and glass for those 2 timeout rooms that I spoke above in the previous one. Again, this will come out of the project contingency.
Move to approve bid package 8 for general trades.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin,
Second.
second by Dr. Malco. Any discussion?
Is this like a cool-down room? Like a cool-down?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
their timeout room might not be the best descriptor for it, but yes, they are rooms where students who are upset can go to calm down. We are adding some additional special education programming at Bibbage, and they do not have, they have 1 room right now. The building is growing, and plus with some extra programming there, we felt like it would be a good time to make sure they were well-equipped.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Becky, I apologize. I will let my contractors know the correct terminology. My next item is to seek your approval to award and execute change order number 1 to Sweeney Electric for the Bibbage Building Project Bid Package 11, electrical, in the amount of $2,893. This is for the electrical switches, fire alarm, and lights for the new cool-down rooms.
There you go. Thank you. So moved.
Motion by Dr. Malco,
Second.
second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
That will also come out of the project contingency as well. My last item is to seek your approval to award and execute change order number 2 to Gluth Brothers Roofing Company for bid package 11, roofing and metal wall panels to Gluth. And this is in the amount of $2,846 that we have them use the rubber to temporary in all my rooftop curb openings while we wait on the rooftops to arrive, hopefully here by February, but we want to get it all watertight. So they temporaried in the curb openings for us, and that will as well come out of the project contingency.
Bill, that was, let's see, that was bid package 12. I think you said 11.
Oh, yes, sir, Howard, bid package 12.
Okay. Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Marshall,
Second.
second by Dr. Malco. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our Director of Business Services, Mr. James.
Thank you. I only have one item, and that's to seek your approval for the donations that were listed in your board packet.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mrs. Kelly.
Second.
Second by, was that Dr. Medlin? Yep. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is no public comments, so we'll move into our board comments and consideration of future agenda items. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you. I just have one comment. I'd like to extend to everyone here on the dais upstairs here, and all those in the audience, a joyous and safe holiday.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
I echo Howard. Hope everybody has a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Dr. Medlin.
No comment, thanks.
Dr. Malco.
I have a question for Mr. Ledger. What's
stacked up there outside the high school, all that material that's stacked there?
That is air handling units and rooftop units for the freshman center HVAC project. As you've heard the whole fall, I've been telling you about the AHU, we're missing a Grimmer. And so these are coming in a lot better and on time, and so we're taking them when we can get them to make sure we have them.
Got it.
And that's, we didn't want to put them in the parking lots because of, they could get damaged if we have snow and have snow removal. So that was the place we decided that was best to keep
Got
them
it.
safe and have them on site.
Okay, thank you. I really have nothing special to say other than I think everybody's doing a good job, and I wish you a restful holiday break and spend some time with your family and get some rest. Working in public schools is a challenging feat these days, isn't it? At many levels, but thank you, everyone, for your commitment.
And I just have a few things. I attended the ISBA legislative Zoom meeting as well as the Managing Public Comments Zoom and the law seminar, and I'm going to piggyback after Mr. Seljan when he said the seminar was getting better. I thought that seminar was really good, the law one. They all were, but I just, want to thank Dr. Veraco because everything that was in these Zoom meetings and some of the things that were said at the law seminar, we're doing, and thanks for your leadership and your guidance. So appreciate that, and wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year also. And with that, I'll turn it over to board calendar, future activities. Dr. Veraco.
Yeah, so we get a little break here. We will re-adjourn on Monday, January the 8th, and I strongly recommend everybody take a look at the calendar. There are some interesting contests and concerts coming up real soon, so try to attend some stuff at the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Yes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.